friends, and welcome back to my series, How the Gospels Became History, Jesus and Mediterranean Myths. This is based on my 2019 book of the same title, published by Yale University Press. Now, since I've dealt with divine conceptions in other videos, I'm going to skip over Chapter 5 and move straight on to Chapter 6, which is on dream visions and prophecies. And in this session, I'll be telling you some stories that parallel, I think, quite significantly, stories that you may be more familiar with from the Gospels. But first, a word of background on dream visions. In the modern world, people typically do not take their dreams as communication with the gods. In the ancient world, that was nearly universal, that the gods communicated through dreams, that specifically lesser divine beings or mediate divine beings like angels and demonists could come and inspire a dream, and that people who could control the angels and demonists could also send dreams to other people. Of course, there were false dreams and there were true dreams. There were dreams meant to deceive and dreams meant to tell the truth. And it was the person who received the dream to make the correct interpretation. Often, dreams were considered to be symbolic communication, and one had to study hard in order to learn what the symbols were. And there were dream handbooks, such as by Artemidorus in the Honora Critica. This is a dream book telling you how to interpret the symbols in certain situations coming from certain people who had the dream. So let me give you an example of a dream vision. This one comes from Plutarch's Life of Alexander, which, by the way, if you haven't read this work, that is The Life of Alexander the Great by Plutarch, I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful read. In this book, Plutarch tells us that Alexander's mother, Olympias, before she became pregnant with Alexander, saw lightning strike her womb. And this lightning caused fire, which spread in all directions and burned like a raging conflagration. 9 months later, Alexander was born. And about 30 years later, like a raging fire, Alexander conquered all the territory from modern Bulgaria to India. And it's in this way that the dream vision was taken to be true. Let me give another example, this time from Dio Cassius. Dio writes that the father of Augustus Caesar, a man by the name of Octavian, had a dream vision in which he saw the sun rise between his wife's thighs. And 9 months later, Augustus, or the man who would become Augustus, was born. Interestingly, Augustus's mother had a similar vision in which she saw her womb rise up to the heaven and spread out all over the earth. This came to signify the world rule of Augustus Caesar, which was accomplished some 40 years later. In the Table Talk of Plutarch, we are told that Plato's father, Ariston, received a dream vision in which he was instructed not to touch his wife for 10 months. And interestingly, a similar case happened with Philip, the father of Alexander the Great. In a dream vision, he saw himself sealing his wife's womb with a signet ring, and the image on the signet ring was of a ferocious lion. Philip did not touch his wife for 10 months. These dream visions in particular are designed to secure the legitimate divine conception of the child, in that human men are instructed to keep away from their wives or their wives-to-be in order that there be no ambiguity about the divine parentage of the child. The Roman biographer Suetonius tells us that an ancient Pythagorean sage called Nigidius Figulus met Octavian outside the Senate house immediately after Octavian's son, the future Augustus, was born. And when Nigidius heard the news of the boy's birth, he immediately cried out that the ruler of the world has been born. Now, I don't vouch for the historicity of any of these dream visions or prophecies. The point here is that all of these dream visions and prophecies occur in what the ancients took to be historical texts, that is, texts in the ancient genre of historia. And they indicate that ancients writing in a historical genre or in a biographical genre could use these fantastical tales to spice up their narrative. And these fantastical tales could be put into historical discourse. The truth of the visions was often taken to be validated years after the visions occurred. So everything in the vision has to be confirmed by hindsight. But ancient historians who wanted to make the vision seem as true as possible placed it into their discourse. And I think that some of these visions should remind you of what we find in biblical texts. For instance, in the Gospel of Matthew, Joseph, Jesus' father, receives 3 separate dream visions in which he's instructed by angels. First, that Jesus is born of God. Second, that he is to escape the murderous plot of Herod. And third, that he is to return from Egypt to Israel. When we turn over to prophecy, we recall that scene in the temple, the famous Nunc Dimittis scene, in which Simeon, an old prophet, meets Mary in the temple and tells her of the great destiny of her child, that he is destined for the rise and fall of many. Now, normally we might think that putting such visions, such dream visions, prophecies in a historical text would invalidate the historical text. But in terms of ancient historiography, it was perfectly plausible to put in dream visions and prophecies such as these. So we ought not to think that the gospel writers were writing fiction. They intended to write in a historiographical genre. They didn't support the myths or the dream visions of other writers, but they used their own dream visions, wove them into their histories, and presented them as historical facts. This was all part of the game of ancient historiography. Now I'm giving you the condensed version of the chapter, a highly streamlined and focalized example of my comparisons in the chapter. And in the chapter, I also give suggestions for further reading and all my notes so that you can check up on my work and find the texts, the ancient and modern ones, of which I'm talking about. So go get the book. Here's the bibliographical information. I'll include my Amazon author page in the description. Have a look and let me know what you think by leaving a comment or a like. For now, I want to sincerely thank everybody for stopping by. It's been a pleasure making these videos, and I hope that you've benefited. If there's any way I can help you, please catch me over Patreon. There you can find me, find all my videos, all my academic articles, and start a dialogue with me. I really appreciate your interest, and I wish all of you the best. Take care.